my voice strong bad.
I remember my
cheerleader so and so.
My cousin introduced me to Newgrounds, which was a terrible idea.
No, I was about to mention Newgrounds. That's what.
Yeah, exactly. That was kind of my introduction. Like I was never on YouTube.
Except there was always porn on Newgrounds. There's always porn on.
Because like my cousin was like, "Oh, it's so," because it was sort of like anticipating that Robot Chicken id fueled pop culture, where it's like, "Hey, it's childhood media. It's all the stuff you grew up with and loved." Except it's now like been just perverted into something.
I just had the funniest memory. I remember me and my friend in like grade 4 went to his house to play some game on Newgrounds, and then like a pop-up ad of just like very clear porn happened, and we just like looked at each other like we were like way too young to see that, but I just remember going like, "Cool."
That is an Amblin moment. Yeah. Like if there was an Amblin in the 21st.
But it was like this era of the internet where like it was like there was Teen Girl Squad, which was a show. It had several.
No, it was a show within a series. Like it was a Homestar Runner series.
Yes, Homestar Runner.
So my friends and I pretty much through middle school spoke in a strong bad voice, and we must have been unbelievably unbearable.
But even like Salad Fingers was in that era.
Yeah.
And like all of those like kind of weird animated like
wasn't there also, it wasn't like, because I know Clone High was on Cartoon Network, but what was the one? There was like
it was actually MTV.
Oh, was it? Okay, so
but they showed it on Teletoon at night. Teletoon Detour, which is why it's
equivalent here. But I remember there was like a show, like an animated YouTube show really early, probably 2007, when it was like all the really early YouTubers like iJustine and Toby Turner and like probably the annoying orange guy, and they were like all on this show together, and it only lasted for probably like a single season. But
oh my god.
But I remember like they used to like thinking about the old crowd of like popular YouTube people is just
because they were like sketch comics, right? Like if you look at
they were also
Smosh,
like, they were like 18.
Yeah.
Like
I remember.
Smosh got famous off of literally lip syncing the Pokemon theme song.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like two kids in front of a webcam singing that, and that's the whole video, and that's what made them famous.
Well, then there was this show that I went back at like literally last week and watched the finale of, called The Alan and Craig Show, that still to this day only has like 50,000 views, but I don't know why. When I was like 10, I loved it. Like it was just these two like roommates, and it was like a very, just classic sketch kind of thing of these two roommates that kind of hate each other, and they just have to like do zany stuff, and the episodes were probably like 15 minutes long. And you kind of like, I was going back and watching them the other day, and I was like, it's kind of insane how these things got popular on YouTube back then, and they were shot on like Shitio. And now it's like, if you're not, like as you said, Mandy, if you're not Will Smith with your full production company like blowing, CG fireworks in your face when you win in Fortnite, then like how do you get famous on YouTube?
Well, the idea of like what happened, what the early YouTube was the Wild West, where it was like simply no one knew. They were just making content to make content, and it was like a broadcast system. Whereas now it's structured, it's advertised, it's you get demonetized if you do these certain things, and so people are trying to build off of trends and be like, oh, you know what, I'm doing makeup stuff, or like, oh, I'm doing streaming Fortnite. I remember there was like the Rooster Teeth and Let's Play like thing when that was just starting up. I think the guys at Rooster Teeth were a lot more innovative in how they were approaching stuff, and then that was jumped on by Polygon in some manner, but now it's just kind of turned into, again, something much more bland and structured because there is monetization involved, and so people revert back to something simpler, safer, and just one tone. So you can go,
I got a question for the group, actually, because I think there's something kind of interesting about how we used to have like zeitgeist media back in the day. Like there was just like pieces of pop culture, be it like regardless of the medium, that would just encapsulate, like take everything that's up in the ether and just synthesize it into something coherent, right? Like whether you like it or not, like sort of you could argue that like The Matrix and a lot of other late, like very 1999 movies were kind of capturing that. Some could say that Magnolia was kind of like that. But do you think that like it's kind of impossible to create, say, zeitgeist media in a point where everything is deliberately trying to capitalize on a trend, which isn't to say that people were capitalizing on trends before. I mean, like, you know, as far back as the Industrial Revolution, people were like, okay, cereals are popular with kids, so like we just make cereals, right? Like serialized stories and adventure stories. But like nowadays, like it's so weird that like we don't have something that is kind of like, I'm trying to think of what you would call it, but almost like a decade or generation defining piece of media.
Well, something to remember is the fact that like what's changed since now and then is the fact that YouTube has become a different entity. I mean, here I am speaking on a YouTube channel right now, but there is a lot of like motivation behind how they actively prioritize certain bits of content, like
that make them money specifically.
Yeah, exactly, and so that creates like people making like very basic, I'm going to talk to you about the newest update of COD. I'm going to talk for 10 minutes when really it just needs to be a 30-second like, hey, they nerfed this gun. So I think
it's interesting though that you brought up Rooster Teeth, because Rooster Teeth is like a prime example of like company gone wrong. Like it started as this tiny thing, like very much like this, where it was just like 4 friends or maybe 5 friends that were making like online content, and then it just grew for the sake of growth and became this like multi-hundred person company that was then bought out by these corporations that had no idea how to like approach online content. So you wind up with the people that made it what it is losing their creative power because they're no longer in charge and they've kind of, you know, for lack of a better term, cashed out. And then you just have like a company just go into the gutters of like corporatism. And, you know, Bernie, who was the main founder of Rooster Teeth, just left. Like a few weeks ago.
Bernie Sanders? Wow.
Yeah, Bernie Sanders. Yeah. No, he just left, and it was kind of a long time coming, I think. I don't follow up much with that company, but like I used to watch them pretty regularly and then kind of stopped when it...
Well, there's literally from one of the first, like, I don't know, I think the Streamy Awards, like I think literally the first year that they had that, Bo Burnham did a song where... he literally says at the end of the song, like, it's like called Welcome to YouTube, and it's all about how free YouTube is, and at the very end, he's like, it'll keep going on and on forever and ever until it's privatized, and that's like the end of the song, and that's literally what happened, is like, because that was right before
Google bought
the whole sponsors and ads, and, well, it was like people were, I think by then it was like right when YouTube had started their partner program.
Yeah.
So there was like the 10, I think 15 maybe partners who were like the 15 biggest YouTubers. And then it sort of started growing from there, and they were looking for more sponsors. And that's where it all comes from, right? Like even there was a couple years ago, there was a bunch of controversy because like certain YouTubers, like a bunch of advertisers didn't want to work with YouTube anymore because some of their content was getting like next to certain things, and then YouTube started taking things down and trying to figure everything out. And as soon as the power goes to the people with the money as opposed to the creators, like you've lost that like Wild West aspect.
The biggest mistake that YouTube has made is not just shutting down kids' content. Because I think that's where advertisers are so like concerned with like what they're like, what's my thing being shown on? Because you have like, so YouTube's cracked down lately on like, you have to essentially, when you upload a video now, say whether or not it's uploaded for kids, which is fine, but there's also no like monitoring of that. Like you go to the kids section of YouTube and there's like Spider-Man and Elsa dry humping on a bed, and that's like YouTube's kids content. Or there's like a family pranking each other by like throwing their children into walls and like
waterboarding them.
Some like really like messed up crap on like the kids side of YouTube. Yeah. That is just
literally abusing their kids.
And it's like they're like their big thing, their big change to like crack down on that was just like, now people have to say if they're uploading for kids, but like without any sort of actual repercussions, because it makes a lot of money, because children watch
Well, so many of
Tons
those
of that
videos,
stuff.
like the one you brought up, the animated one with Spider-Man and Elsa. There's
Oh,
a
it's
guy
not
called
animated.
Folding Ideas that just like a
It's not
great
animated.
video.
It's people
There's a lot of them
dressed
that
up.
aren't animated. Yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of them
I'm
are just
sorry.
people in
Yeah.
spandex suits.
Okay, okay, sure. Like I saw this great Folding Ideas video where he talks about the animated ones that I think are just computer generated. Like there's really no way. Like the problem with the way that they're doing things right now is just such an easily bypassable thing. Because, like, I mean, if a computer is pumping out like 100 videos of Spider-Man and Elsa dry humping in a day, how can you possibly circumvent that?
Yeah,
But it's also the technology has changed. Like let's talk about Rooster Teeth. It started with a bunch of guys doing red versus blue, which is screen cap, which is capping.
it was the first machinima, pretty much.
Yeah, but they were capturing Halo things and making jokes in private Halo servers, and they created narratives in a format that was difficult to do with the technological the technology at the time. And now it's like I could do it sitting where I am right now. It's just download a couple things and I'm set.
Yeah.
But they had to actually plan it out, have a great deal of planning, technology, and that sort of thing. So there was a certain sort of I don't mean to hearken like a gatekeeper or anything, but it's once everyone has the ability to create content, it just becomes a flood, and it's harder to find the innovative, the creative sort of thing.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's the other thing with and we touched on this another time in a conversation, but I think that's the thing you look at with cameras, even that every camera these days could be projected onto a movie screen and would look good. You can make pretty much any consumer camera look really good nowadays. And I think the kind of inverse of the silver lining versus the bad side of that is, yes, there's so much flooded content where everyone thinks that they're now making really great content just simply because their camera shoots in a high resolution, and they're well, I'm professional now. But at the same time, I think that even though it's harder to stick out, if you do stick out as someone who is has all this stuff but is still actually doing good content and is doing things that are still fresh and new, and is not just kind of relying on the fact that oh great, I've got an 8K camera, and that still creates things that are interesting, that winds up almost, to me, sticking out even more nowadays than it used to. Because nowadays I'm in spite of how easy it is to just cash in and put something out that is super super simple and super easy, and I'm just going to make a video about the newest Fortnite update, when somebody actually puts in the effort to make something really good and really, I guess for lack of a better term, artistic, it can actually stick out to me much more than it would have, in the kind of lesser published days of YouTube, I suppose.